Most practices see a lot of numbers every month, but without context, very few of them tell you what's actually going wrong. What I'm going to show you today are 5 numbers and how to analyze them to show you what is happening. They tell you very quickly where you're losing money and whether your systems are actually working. Collection rate is one that almost everybody understands, but let's frame it a little bit differently than what you're probably used to thinking about it, than how you're used to probably thinking about it. Collection rate is not just about how much you collect, it's about how much you don't. So when a practice is at 92%, they might feel like they're doing pretty well. But what this actually means is, in practical terms, one day out of every 2 weeks, you're working for free. You're not getting paid for it. And the worst part about this, and why this really matters, is you don't get to pause your overhead during that time. So this isn't just a percentage to look at, a quick reference number. It also shows a potential profit problem. This graph shows real data from a clinic that we manage. Now, if we look at the beginning of the year, we can see that in January, we were pretty low. We usually see this. This is normal to see a low rate like this at the beginning of the year. But by March, we will have expected this to stabilize. As you can see, in March, we were not stabilized. What this graph doesn't show is this clinic experienced extreme growth in the last 2 years. And while BIC was there to manage their back-end revenue cycle systems, what wasn't growing and scaling was their front end. Think insurance benefit updates, fee schedule maintenance, verifying eligibility. Those things were all lagging and struggling to keep up with their production, which resulted in a lower collection rate. Because on the back end, you can only do so much reactively. So in June, this practice took a huge leap of faith and allowed us to take care of all of their front-end systems. And as you can see, by December, we finished at a 99.9% collection rate, which means this clinic only lost 0.1% of their total production as uncollectible revenue. The point of this slide, in order to protect your growth, you must scale your support systems. Adjustments. This is where a lot of practices quietly lose control because adjustments feel routine. They feel par for the course. They usually don't raise much of a concern, but they should, depending on when and where they are happening. If an adjustment happens at production, that's expected. Think your insurance network write-offs, your membership discount plans. Those are all expected. But if it happens after that patient has left, after that money should have been collected, that means you thought you were getting paid and then you didn't. And instead of fixing why so that it doesn't happen again, it's just removed from your numbers, which, don't get me wrong, any uncollectible AR should be reconciled so that it doesn't inflate your AR, right? But if you're not doing anything to prevent it from happening again, you're not just missing that revenue the first time, it's just revenue you're choosing not to go after in the future. The next one is one of my favorites. It's one of the most humbling numbers in your practice, and that is the story aged AR shows. Because it shows everything that didn't get finished. It was started, but something happened and it didn't get completed. And more importantly, it shows you what keeps not getting completed. Because aged AR does not grow randomly, it grows in patterns. Think the same claims, the same insurance carriers, the same codes, the same benefit problems, the same breakdown issues, the same delays. So when this number grows, it's not telling you to work harder. It's showing you exactly where your system is failing and telling you to work smarter. And if you're not watching it weekly, you're not catching those failures while they're fixable, and more importantly, while they're still manageable. Everything that we've just talked about, this number is super obvious, but it's important to bring up because it shows the cumulative of these issues and these numbers not being watched. It's usually also when you feel it. On paper, this practice looks like it's doing pretty well. The production in 2025 was super strong. Keep in mind, this is a one doctor practice. That's huge. But here's what's actually happening. Nearly $400,000 of their production never made it to the bank. It did not convert production to revenue. And that's not future revenue. That's work that's already been done. You scheduled it, you staffed it, you paid for it, and then you didn't finish the job. So the issue here isn't production. It's everything that happens before that patient sits in your chair and after they've left your practice. Year-over-year performance. Many practices don't analyze this, and if they do, they might misread it for growth. They see the production going up and assume everything is following suit, but growth only matters if it's aligned. Production, revenue, and your collection rate. That should all move together. But if production grows faster than revenue, you don't have growth, you have a gap. And if collection rate is declining at the same time, that gap is getting a lot worse. So the question isn't, are we growing? It's, are we producing sustainable growth? Are my systems keeping up with my growth? Let's look at this practically with some data attached. This is what misalignment looks like. And it's sort of disguised as something else. It looks like production increased a ton because it did. The collections also increased year over year. But what didn't happen is these two KPIs did not increase at the same rate. And the space in between those two, that's not theoretical. That's money that never showed up. It never converted. It never was deposited into your bank. And this is where most practices get misled. They feel chaos. They feel confusion because they're busier. They see higher production. They're hitting goals, but they're not seeing or feeling the result of it. In fact, if it's to this point, they're feeling a cash flow problem. Now, when we put this all together, we're going to see a bigger picture here. Yes, the clinic grew 37%. They grew their production 37%. But as we already pointed out, their collections, while they increased, did not keep a linear pace. So what that means is, even though they grew 37%, only 40% of that growth converted to revenue. I'll say that again, but differently. 60% of their growth was not converted, not deposited, left open on their books. At the same time, their collection rate declined year over year, which means performance declined. It did not grow. It got worse. With a jump in production of 37%, we can assume their team was probably stretched thinner. They were stressed. And that stress translates to $131,000 lost revenue just from this declining performance. So, had they maintained this collection rate, they would have collected, turned revenue, converted production into cash, $131,000 more dollars in 2025. But because they were stressed and stretched thin, their efficiency declined, and therefore their revenue rate reclined. So, what does that really mean? It means you worked more, you worked harder, you worked longer hours, but you got paid less efficiently for that work. And in fact, if we want to look at this really black and white, you worked for 16% of 2025, 16% of the time, for free. And here's the part that matters. To fix this, it doesn't require more production. It doesn't require more patience. It doesn't require more hours. In fact, if you can change nothing except collect at a higher success point, let's say 98%, you would have collected an additional $340,000 in revenue in 2025 alone. But what's really important is you want to make sure that you're getting that in 2026 and in 2027. Because this isn't about growth. This is a systems problem. And if you're not scaling your systems with your growth literally is just costing you. So, I know this has been bleak, but at the end of the day, and I know I keep saying this isn't just about production. Production should not be the number one driver here. What should be your driver is how much of what you already are doing is converting to revenue. And all of the steps that it takes to convert it to revenue. It's not just about selling treatment and getting that production. In fact, for most practices, this gap of conversion is a lot bigger than they think. There's more opportunity than they can see. So, if you've made it this far, you're likely in two positions. You're tracking your numbers, but they're not improving, or you're not sure where to start. And either of those things is fine, because honestly, both of those categories are fixable once you can clearly see what's happening and understand what it's going to take to fix it. We created a 5-minute revenue gap quiz, and this is going to help identify with your practice where your revenue is leaking. And if you want to walk through those issues, we can book a discovery call. Both of these links are found in the email that you received that had this video linked to it. And we can work this out together. But whatever direction you go, at least now you have some clarity on what you should be looking for.